Evening and welcome to this enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth held on Monday, October 5th, 2020. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors and staff and delegates who will participate in tonight's council meeting. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. The province has weighed in since our last council meeting, tightening a number of the rules related to COVID-19. I was strangely on trend at our last meeting with my comments about an explanation of social circles. The province has now indicated that these should be suspended. We are entering a phase where it will be a lot more tempting to question all of the rules. I am seeing it and hearing about it. I know that we've been fortunate locally, not all that many cases in North Perth and no deaths, although 2 were reported today. But again, the provincial indicators are not looking very welcoming. We need to remain vigilant now to avoid more significant actions, which I fear are coming. Remember, we are in community. We live near each other. We affect each other in many ways. My neighbors' needs aren't always, to borrow from a famous song, just passing fancy, but they are real and present. You can help them, sometimes directly, sometimes through government. It is easy to be tired. I find myself seeking more naps, perhaps than usual. We know that mental health is affected in our community. Again, we are connected, and there are ways that we can reach our family and friends through this period of relative isolation to give them a boost, to help with their needs. I encourage optimized kindness from individuals, from institutions like government, from businesses. It is our best way forward. Let's move now to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point during the meeting. Let's start first tonight with Councillor Anstead.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest this evening on item 5.4.1, the accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anstead. Next up, Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I would like to declare a conflict on 5.4.1, the accounts, as well as 13.1, as I have grandchildren attending both the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center as well as the St. Mary School daycare and after-school program.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. I see there's an addition to your usual disclaimer. I suppose a little congratulations is due there. And Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I would like to declare pecuniary interest on also items 5.4.1 as well, 13.1. The confirmatory bylaw is my mother and father-in-law are tenants at Perth Meadows. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kellum. To explain our virtual processes, I will be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that will be put before us tonight. I will do this to some extent alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. That also applies when the mayor forgets your declarations of pecuniary interest. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the speaking list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you are not audible, I will call on you and let you know. You do not need to ask if you can be heard. I'll be the arbiter of that. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, then return to a mute state. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting. There is an amendment, and the clerk is to explain that to us. So I'm going to set my controls so that she can speak and not create the feedback that ends the universe. Hold on.
Tonight's council agenda is to be amended. At this point in time, we would like to remove the bylaw under the Director of Finance, which is agenda item 5.4.3, and move that bylaw further down to the bottom of your agenda, and it's now being placed under reporting out following the in-camera session.
Thank you, Clerk Bearfeld. So, councillors, there's a small change there pertaining to the sequencing of actions related to item 5.4.3. So the motion that I have before me for consideration is the agenda for tonight's meeting be as amended be approved. Councillor Anstead, will you serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We are now at item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require either council's recognition or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, or individual action may do so. There are 5 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Please indicate through the chat function in the web conferencing solution. Felds, anything? Okay. So I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that consent items 3.1 to 3.5 be received for information, and the minutes of the September 28th, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted. Councillor Duncan, can I call on you to serve as our mover for that? Councillor Duncan, you with us? Technology. Okay, we should investigate this. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I will make that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I would certainly second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Okay, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Can I just confirm that we have Councillor Duncan, his audio is okay? Oh, Matt, we're not sure your microphone is working tonight. Okay, so that is carried. Let's move on to agenda item number 4. This is our opportunity to deal with public meetings and delegations. Our agenda tonight includes one public meeting to deal with a drain matter. To facilitate the public meeting, we must temporarily adjourn from our regular council meeting. I have before me a motion to make that happen that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth proceed to a public meeting to consider the Shade Near Municipal Drain 2020 report prepared by GM Blue Plan Engineering. Can I call on Councillor Richardson to be our mover for that one? Councillor Richardson? We seem to be having some audio visual problems. Councillor Richardson?
Can you hear me? I'll move that.
There we are. Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our seconder for this one?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. That means that we are temporarily in recess for the purpose of holding a public meeting. Let's get to that now. This is a consideration of the report of the Shade Near Municipal Drain. And I welcome all those who have come for the purpose of learning more about this and considering information that will be presented to council tonight. Again, if any assessed landowners are with us, we welcome you to our meeting as well. Thank you for joining us. At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Matt Ash of GM Blue Plan Engineering to present the report from the engineer on this matter. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and hopefully my audio is okay.
We can hear you.
Great. So tonight you have before you the report for the Shade or Shoddy, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, near drain. This is a very small municipal drain project at the intersection of line 57 and road 159, just outside of Moncton. If you read through the report, you may notice that this actually started way back in 2014. Oddly enough, this project was initiated by a landowner, John Tolinar, who is the sole beneficiary of the project and as well the sole person paying for the project. Sometime in 2015, he elected to put this project on hold until circumstances improved or what have you. I'm not even sure. So that's why the significant time delay from when we were actually initially appointed to producing this report. Earlier this year, John contacted us and indicated that he did in fact want to go ahead with this. The whole purpose of this project is to close in a small part of open drain. This open drain cuts off the bottom corner of one of John's fields, as you can see from the drawings. It actually also cuts off the bottom corner of the adjacent field, but I did contact those landowners and they had no desire to do anything. So the project itself is very, very simple. It's just putting a pipe across from an inlet diagonally across the field in the shortest possible route and outletting it into the existing open drain at the property line. As you can see in your report, the cost estimate is approximately 92,000. But there is only, as I mentioned, one person assessed on this, as there is only one person who gains any benefit from it. So all of the cost is to the landowner, Cajun Farms. As I said, it's a very simple project, and I won't really take any more of your time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thanks, Matt. At this time, are there any questions from council or for the assessed landowner? Council, any questions? Okay, then apparently, given that there are no questions, there's been no evidence of anyone withdrawing or significant concerns raised at this time. We can move to adjournment of this public meeting, and I have a resolution to make that happen for council's consideration. The resolution reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth hereby close the public meeting to consider the Shade Near Municipal Drain 2020 report prepared by GM Plan Engineering, and the council reconvene. Find my words tonight. And the council reconvene into regular open council. Councillor Seiler, will you serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder for that?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried, which means we can remove ourselves from the public meeting session and return to regular open council. At this time then, pertaining to this matter, I have a few resolutions for our consideration. The first reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will accept the Shade Near Municipal Drain report dated September 2020, prepared by GM Blue Plan Engineering. Councillor Duncan, have we sorted out your audio issues yet? Apparently not. Okay, let's turn to Councillor Behrens. Would you serve as our mover for that one?
Yes, I will move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstead, will you serve as our second?
Yes, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on that resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Next up is about the quarter revision for our consideration. A resolution that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will hold the Court of Revision for the Shade Near Municipal Drain on October 26, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Can I call on Deputy Mayor Kellum to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll make that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on the Court of Revision resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My vote didn't register. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Anstead. So that is carried. And now let us turn to the bylaw for this purpose. It reads as follows: that bylaw number 141-2020, being a bylaw to provide for a drainage works shade near municipal drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first and second time, and be provisionally adopted, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and be sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Richardson as our mover for that one.
I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our seconder?
I'll second the motion, yes.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on the bylaw? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you, Council. That moves us past item 4 and into agenda items number 5, which are reports from departments and key staff. Tonight, we do have a report from item 5.1, CAO's office. Item 5.1 brings forward to Council a requested report on possible council actions related to a new Ontario law called Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Security Act 2020. I'm going to call on CAO Snell to present this report and outline the suggested actions. CAO Snell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and good evening. On September the 14th, Council received a letter from the Minister of Agriculture regarding the Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Security Act. At that time, Council passed a resolution seeking input from our 2 local agricultural organizations located within Perth County. And at that time, I did seek direction from the 2 organizations. The Christian Farmers Association did respond, and as of leaving for vacation, the agriculture OFA had not responded as of yet, and I will follow up with them tomorrow when I'm back in the office to determine where that's at. In the meantime, I can certainly circulate that letter from the Perth County Federation of Agriculture prior to the October 15th deadline. However, we will not be having a council meeting before then. Certainly I can answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks, CEO Snell. Councillors, any questions about this matter or the report or the requested or suggested action? Councillor Andreessen?
Hi, thank you through you, Mayor Todd. Just to clarify, Chris, so once you've had a chance to kind of take a look at the information from OFA and Christian farmers, you'll just be sending off the letter that you're proposing this evening? Just to clarify, thanks.
Yeah, so basically we'll just summarize the comments both from the Perth OFA and the Christian Farmers and include that in a letter. I can circulate the letter that we will be sending in to the minister, as well as we will be attaching the 2 letters from our local farm organizations to provide support to them.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, on this matter, I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth direct the CAO to submit a letter to the Honorable Ernie Hardman, Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. It summarizes comments of the Perth County Federation of Agriculture and Perth Christian Farmers Association on the Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act, proposed approaches to regulatory provisions discussion paper, and include the letters from these organizations as attachments to the municipality's letter. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And Deputy Mayor Callum, we're not recording your vote. What say you?
Yes, my e-scribe went down. I am in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. Next up then, we are turning to items 5.2, which are reports from the Clerk's Department. For item 5.2.1, Council is provided with a report from North Perth Planner Sean Yilmaz, which outlines the request for a site plan agreement with Nickel Properties related to land in North Perth. I'll ask Mr. Yilmaz to review this proposed matter. No? Oh. Oh, well, Council, we have some very nice news. Planner Yilmaz is a new father, and so he's not attending today. A very good reason not to, and I'm tempted to bang my gavel in celebration of this. So I believe a CBO Podnowitz, Ed Podnowitz, will speak to this matter. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Todd and Council. I hope everybody can hear me. So I'm just reading Sean's report here that he prepared in regards to his site plan application. And this is an application for Hyde Construction on behalf of Spenny Holdings Incorporated. They're proposing to construct 2 4-story apartment buildings on the subject lands. Each apartment building contains 59 units for a total of 118 units. The subject lands are described as Part Lot 29 and 30, Concession 1, Part Lot 16 of Registered Plan 430, Block 78 of Plan 44M74. The property is located in a recently approved plan of subdivision, which is located west of Mitchell Road, Highway 23, and south of Kincaid Street. The application is submitted to comply with the Municipality of North Perth site plan requirements. Under the official plan, the property is within the Special Policy Area E designation, and this designation permits a variety of residential uses, including apartment buildings. North Perth zoning bylaw, the subject property is within the residential R5 zone, and the R5 zone permits the proposed multi-unit residential use. There was a recent application for minor variance A20-2020, which was approved by the North Perth Committee of Adjustment, which increased the maximum permitted height to 13.82 meters, 45 feet, and they reduced the parking requirements from the required 1.5 to 1.25 parking spaces for each unit. So I have had an opportunity to review the application along with our municipal engineer, our fire chief, the public works department, and our North Perth planner. And the drawings contain the information required for a complete review and can serve as a basis for a site plan agreement. Adequate parking, access, fire protection, lot grading, and drainage are provided for the development as shown on the site plan before you. And the recommendation from our planner is the Municipality of North Perth approve the site plan as submitted. And I will entertain any questions if you have any. I just want to remind you that I believe the Hyde construction crew are here if there's any questions pertaining to the actual construction of the apartment dwellings.
Thanks, Mr. Podnowitz. Glad to have you pinch hitting tonight. Yes, we do have in attendance. Should council have any specific questions? Representatives from Hyde Construction, and we have Mr. Chauvin on behalf of MHBC Planning. So let's turn to council for questions and comments. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and through you, perhaps either Chief Building Official Podnowitz, or perhaps Pierre Chauvin, or the applicant, Mr. Hyde. I think it's very exciting to see this form of development here within North Perth. I'm just wondering if you can provide any further details in terms of the type of units here and sort of from an affordability standpoint. Are these units, are they targeted to a certain age or demographic? Thank you.
Thanks. I think with council's indulgence, perhaps I'll turn to Mr. Chauvin first.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg, and good evening, members of council. Before I reply, I just wanted to say a big thank you to your staff who worked diligently and hard in helping us move these applications of site plan and variance applications forward. It's certainly exciting for me being involved in this particular piece of land for a number of years on behalf of the subdivider. And it's nice to see plans move forward. And I echo Councillor Rothwell's comments. It's nice to see this particular development move forward with it's an innovative form of housing that's I would say unique to Listowel in North Perth. And with respect to the questions, these will be rental units. And I don't believe a final sort of rental rate has been established yet. This will be operated by some of you know the company Skyline, who own similar rental properties in Listowel. They will be the sort of operator once the apartments are built. And the units are geared definitely towards sort of an empty nester middle lifestyle age group. And definitely I would have to say though, is not our client's intent or Skyline's intent, and don't want to mislead anybody that this is truly affordable housing. That's not what this is. But it is certainly what you've heard the buzzword of attainable housing. And certainly that's the market range that we're targeting. Hope that helps.
Any supplementary, Councillor Rothwell?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks. And Deputy Mayor Callum?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'd just like to say that I've been following this construction project since it was brought and also attended the public meeting just about a month ago. Like Al said, this is very exciting and good news for our municipality. And I'd just like to thank the developer for choosing North Perth as its location. And if you ever want to see the similar project, it's there's a similar unit right behind the EMS building on Duros Street in Stratford. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Callum. Anyone else before I bring a couple of resolutions to our attention? Okay, so I have a resolution and a bylaw resolution to consider. First up is the general resolution, which reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves site plan application SP 10-2020 submitted by Hyde Construction Spenny Holdings Inc. affecting property described as Part Lot 29 and 30 Concession 1, Part Lot 16 of Registered Plan 430, Block 78 of Plan 44M74, and that the council proceed with the adoption of the bylaw authorizing the mayor and the clerk to enter into a site plan agreement and have it registered on title of the subject property. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be a mover for that?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now the bylaw council for consideration. It reads as follows: that bylaw number 142-2020 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a site plan agreement with Nickel Properties Inc. be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for that?
Yes, Mayor Todd, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, are you with us in the audio fashion now? Not yet. We still haven't got Councillor Duncan with us. So let's move to Deputy Mayor Kellum. Will you serve as our seconder for that?
I sure will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate, Council? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My vote did not register. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstead. And Councillor Behrens, we're not getting your vote either. What say you?
I am in favor.
Thank you. So that is carried as well. Thank you, Council. I too, like the Deputy Mayor, am quite excited about this form of development in our community. and looking forward to seeing what it brings. It's a big one, that's for sure. All right, thank you. So let's move on to item, we'll turn a few pages here. I guess we have no report from our interim manager of recreation, but I know that she and her team have been extremely busy and want to thank them for all of their work in getting the ice in at the complex. And I think ice is ready or near ready at the other two arenas. So demand has been good, and we've forged ahead with preparation for ice surfaces in all of our 3 ice facilities, which is very exciting. I know that she's been at work at a whole lot of other things too. And so my appreciation to that team for their hard work. Let's turn to item 5.4 then, reports from the Treasury and Finance Department. As item 5.4.1, finance staff has brought forward for council review recently the accounts. I'll note that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions from council of our staff about this report? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration, and the font is very strange on this page. Perhaps the treasurer needs a new printer, I don't know. But it reads as follows, that the following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total is $3,376,757.01. Can I call on, let's see here, Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Question still possible? Seeing no indication of that, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up is item 5.4.2. In this, council is presented with a request to enact a bylaw proposing authorization of the maintenance and repair of the Hannah municipal drain. I'll invite Ms. Hale, our Director of Finance and Treasurer, to address this item. Ms. Hale.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kasenberg. As mentioned, the Hannah drain has been completed, and at this point in time, we are endeavored to bill out the charges to those benefiting landowners, and the bylaw is here tonight for your consideration.
Very good, thank you. I have a resolution. Any questions from council on this matter? Okay, I have a resolution then for our consideration that bylaw number 136-2020 being a bylaw to authorize the maintenance and repair of the Hannah Municipal Drain lower portion be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Rothwell, can I call on you to serve as our mover?
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder for this one?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And next up, this happens apparently periodically, as in every 5 years. There's opportunity to consider updates to the municipality's procurement bylaw. And we've had a discussion about process today, and we've, as you've heard from the clerk earlier in our meeting, determined that we would like this bylaw, the actual bylaw, to be considered after our confidential or closed session meeting tonight, because there may be some opportunity through that session to consider some possibilities that would warrant change to the bylaw. At this time, I'll invite Treasurer Hale our finance director to introduce this matter to us. Fran.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. This evening, we have a number of items or amendments and updates to our municipal procurement bylaw. And at this time, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I would like to ask Josh White to take us through the proposed amendments for council consideration this evening. Josh is our procurement officer, and at this time, if I might just transfer to Josh.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. As Fran mentioned, I am the finance and purchasing assistant with the municipality. My primary functions are to ensure a fair procurement process, spend government, risk management, insurance, health and safety, for example, and vendor management. I've came to the municipality of North Perth about almost exactly 2 years ago today. And since then, we've been steadily increasing in the number of bids that we put out to the public. In 2018, we've issued 29 bids. 2019 went up to 36. And then so far in 2020, we will be at 41 as of tomorrow. So through an increase in the number of bids and circumstances that we've ran into and looking at best practices of other municipalities, myself, in conjunction with the Director of Finance, Francis, and some of the department heads, have conjured up some items that we were thinking of adding to the bylaw, initially first as an amendment, but given that the number added up and the amount of people who reference the bylaws on a weekly basis, I would say, we decided to actually just include it within the pre-existing document as sort of additions with some subtractions, which I've highlighted. Many of them refer to things such as vendor performance, pre-qualified rosters, and green procurement. I can go through them all one by one if council wishes or haven't had the time to review. But with that, I've brought this bylaw, revised bylaw, up to you for consideration. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
So at this time, if there are any questions, Josh and myself will be more than happy to entertain them. And as Josh mentioned, ultimately we're looking to have a completely updated bylaw that is under one number as opposed to two or consecutive amendments. As mentioned, it's much easier for a thorough read and reduces some of the misinformation. So we're looking forward to having a new document at some point.
Thanks, Ms. Hale. Councillors, questions at this time for staff about this matter? Councillor Rothwell first.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and a question through to Josh. Nice to see you, Mayor Josh. On the documented bylaw changes, item 1, could you tell me the reason why it's the proposals to remove bids and tenders automatically opens all tenders received and makes public? And secondly, just before that, the sentence that says the bid amount shall not be read aloud. Is there particular reasons for both of those? Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't want to say old days, but 5 years ago or so, we used to receive our tenders in paper in person, and we'd have a number of the vendors who are participating be present at the time. And as we opened the sealed submissions, we would call out the prices and whatnot. The municipality transitioned to bids and tenders 3-4 years ago now, I believe, just not too far in advance of me coming aboard. And fairly quickly after bids and tenders was implemented, we slowly saw a trickling in the numbers of people who would be present come bid closing. Since I've been within municipality, there hasn't been one vendor there at that time. So, and how it works with the bids and tenders is that once the submission's made, the program automatically unseals the bids. And depending on the type of bid, if it is a tender or a request for quotation, those prices are made publicly immediately. So there's no need for the vendors to be present at that time.
Thank you. I'm just wondering the second part of my question. The bid amount shall not be read aloud. Is there a particular reason for that?
So that was actually taken out, and that was in. It reads as that it was referencing all bids, but in reality, it's in relation to a request for procurement. And with RFPs, given that there's a number of items at stake that are up for evaluation, and we're not making apples to apples comparisons at all time, it's not standard practice to read those submitted prices aloud upon closing, and nor do we do that now with the bids and tenders platform.
Okay, thank you. That was just a little confusing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Barron's next.
Thank you. This question is for Josh. Josh, I noticed that we use the terminology roster, but in the definitions in the actual bylaw, there is no definition for roster. And when you go to section 14, it talks about the roster for professional or specialized services, but then it talks about pre-qualification and expression of interest. And to me, I find it a little bit somewhat confusing. Is the intention to have a list of electricians, for example, or a list of paving companies? Is that what we're calling the roster? And if so, is it possible to get roster in the definitions? Thank you.
Yes, and to be fair, that section was included within the RFP, or not the RFP, the bylaw, sorry, initially, and the definition was missing, and not catching that. So missight on my part, but ultimately it's a case-by-case scenario. About a year ago, we did establish a roster of electricians, and it was generally geared towards the electricians who come in for amounts that council doesn't typically see, small $500 or $1,000 jobs, A, to get set rates, and B, to make sure that they're properly insured, they meet industry requirements, et cetera, is more of a way to protect the municipality than anything. When it comes to larger scale rosters and how that roster in particular functions, I'll use the example. I know Lyndon from Public Works brought forth the concept of a roster that he's looking at for engineering services, which we're actually in the process of evaluating the RFP results now. And what the proper way, in my mind, at least from a procurement perspective, to go about it is that whoever would be responsible for approving an individual piece of work under a certain dollar threshold, for example, with the engineering roster, if we anticipate, there'd be awards that are over $100,000, that council would have the final say in terms of how that roster would function moving forward if there were to be any amendments to how the ultimate approval authority, so to speak. Hope that was clear.
Just supplemental to that, Josh, like it talks about developing a roster of qualified suppliers. And here is my concern is that, for example, and I'm sure we can point to a couple, whether it's paving or bridge building or anything like that, where the municipality, even though the person who was successful in the tender was qualified, it doesn't mean that our experience was necessarily positive. Are we keeping track of individual projects where maybe they would be removed from a roster of qualified suppliers? And I realize it's very difficult to discuss it, but on a general basis, if we had problems with a particular supplier of a particular service, would we consider having a criteria by which they would be removed from our standard roster sheet?
Correct. Yes. So there is an aspect with these bylaw amendments that for a category of vendor performance, which kind of talks about it, but specifically for a roster that we put out, we explicitly state in the roster how that would work. And for the engineering services one, we did.
you. Any other questions or comments? I actually have several. So I apologize for having these. Some are lengthier than others. First off, it seems early in the document there's a fairly significant effort to avoid naming the e-bidding solution. To me, struck me as a very wise precaution. I need someone to be muted there. Struck me as a very wise precaution since it permits abstraction. It permits you to change your software around bidding in the future should you ever need to do that without having to go back and revise the bylaw. I think that we would be wise to keep it abstract. And so I find myself wondering whether we shouldn't go back through that bylaw text and talk about the e-bidding system or some other definition that we use instead of naming a specific platform so that we don't tie ourselves to a lengthy future that would create a need to come back to council at some future point if we decided to change that vendor. I'll keep going if you like. It's going to be a little bit of a list here. Secondly, I was concerned, I'm not sure I was very clear. For purchases between $10,000 and $25,000, have we omitted an obligation to share bid results with the general public? And that's a question.
Yeah, so standard practice in the field and in terms of municipal procurement, the norm is that the minimum amount that would require a public bid, so $25,000 and 1 cent technically, those items there would be items that are posted on our bids and tenders except for RFPs and special cases. Ultimately, it's a council decision if they want to make it public. There's some challenges with it in terms of how we go about informal quotations now. It's a little difficult. Well, it's impossible to get those prices out on bids and tenders unless we do a bid through bids and tenders itself. But the rationale of not making those numbers public is the dollar amount is so low that it's easy for competition to derive the pricing structure, potentially gaining a competitive advantage. And I know, for example, in some municipalities, they won't even release pricing for purchases up to $100,000 if they feel that's the case.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the bid resolution method that is described in the bylaw. Because essentially that what I detected at least, and perhaps you can correct me, is that the same people who set the bid standards and reviewed the bids in the wind up essentially being the bid resolution or dispute mechanism committee as well. And that seems a little bit internally over obvious. So that may need to be looked at in my opinion. We've asked, sorry, let me one more here. Also, there is a question that I have about a term in the document about a vendor period, and I'm not sure I saw a crystal clear definition of what that meant. So if you want to draw my eyes to that, great. If not, then we should, like Mr. Behrens has asked for a definition of roster, do something about defining that.
Sure, I looked for Todd, you sent these to me in advance, but I did look for the vendor challenge period. I didn't bring that up. I think possibly you were talking about the bid dispute challenge period.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in section 8, it stated that that could happen up to the point of award. I believe it's the second paragraph that's within there. But in terms of the method that revolves around this, there's 2 ways that it ultimately goes, and I'll kind of preface this with that in my 2 years at North Perth, we haven't been down this road once. It's either the procurement officer, director of finance, and the department head who are ultimately making the call with the bid dispute, or it's the CAO / director of finance who's assigning a bid dispute panel to take care of. I've seen both those options in other municipalities' bylaws. I think the reason why we don't really see it that much anymore is just the ease of asking questions and having them answered in bids and tenders. Now that questions are documented, they're typically always being answered. So if there's a particular question with the structure of an RFP, they are required to be answered with a public addendum. So things aren't necessarily being escalated to that level. When items are escalated, from what I know from talking to other individuals in the industry, it's typically things of after a bid, it closes, tender prices are listed, we'll have a vendor come in and kind of mention, we don't think that they did this accurately. We don't think they met the requirements of this, and things of that nature. And usually it's just a matter of having verification of the bid, either by the municipality or the engineer that's working on it.
Okay, thank you. There was a section that asks or talks about an election recess period. And I found that a little unusual given that the municipality always has a CAO and a deputy CAO, and also always, in theory at least, has a mayor and a deputy mayor. So I found that one a little bit puzzling, and wonder if we shouldn't revisit that one a little bit. Let's also look at my suggestion is that we have another look at section 5, wherein we talk about what may want to talk about, a situation of a declared state of emergency, something that we've learned quite a bit about in the last several months. That may also need to be considered here. I would ask on the bottom of page 28, there's a rather important typo near the bottom of that page, which could change the meaning if that typo isn't corrected. Right now, I believe the word is and it should be in. And so that may need to be corrected as well. I didn't take note of allowance for alternative proposals or alternate proposals, which are not uncommon in today's marketplace environment. And wasn't too sure about the timing of reports that are issued related to procurement processes that are described in section 18. And so I found myself wondering if that doesn't need a little bit more finesse for that, that particular section. A few other little typos and corrections that I took note of in my proofreading of the document, which I can pass along. I still think there are some issues there that we may want to talk about from a policy perspective, and clarifying a couple of unusual circumstances which present themselves. Josh, any comments on the last things that I've mentioned?
Just for a point of clarification, the item regarding section 10.5 and the emergency or the state of emergency, I think you were referring to section 10.15. So when we go to review it, that's better. And I'll also state that, you know, we've created these amendments to improve the existing bylaw. Ultimately, I think long term, we're going to be rewriting this bylaw from scratch to get where we want to be. So either yourself, Mayor Todd, or any of the councillors, any of your input would be greatly appreciated. All we're trying to do is improve what we already have. So.
No, that's great. I highlighted some of the areas that I had concern about or had questions about, and I know that you've taken it in that spirit as well. Who else do we have? Mr. Seiler, some questions or comments?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thank you for the report, Josh.
No problem.
I'm just wondering, I'm going back to the time when we did our roofs on our Perth Meadows townhouses. We had problems when we tendered that out with certain, but people couldn't locally tender the projects because they had to hit for some reason. And we ended up getting tenders from the city people, and then they took the job and they couldn't do it themselves, so they re-tendered it out to some other contractors. Is there anything in here how we can cover that up if that can't happen again?
So we can definitely address it in the bylaw, but it's already something that we've addressed in each of the bid documents. So anytime we have a tender or request for quotation, or any bid for that matter, we ask for a list of subcontractors. They have to be upfront and give us that list of subcontractors and exactly what they're doing with their submission. We state that if the type amount of work or any new subcontractors are going to be added, they have to get approval from the municipality first. So if we were in a situation where we awarded a bid and the winning bidder were to want to change contractors, move it on to somebody else, if it's not in our best interest, we have the right to pull the contract from that bidder.
Anything further? So Josh, I just want to actually clarify that last point. So at this point, while we include this in our RFP or RFQ documents, we don't actually have that language in the bylaws.
No, and there's some blending in between it. The bylaw would be the overall governing structure. I would agree with Terry that probably this is something that covers all aspects of procurement that could be added to the existing bylaw or the new bylaw that we write up. But there's certain things, for example, I would argue the ability to submit alternative proposals. We do look at that at a bid by bid basis, and typically in RFPs, if there's the need or we think that the option is there, that will allow alternative proposals right off the bat. So that's more on the side of the administrative side of the bid that we like to include in the actual RFP documents, but the governing policy is what we include within the bylaw.
I'll say that at times I think it's difficult to sort of slice between what is policy that the council should say, yeah, where we stand, and that administrative thing. The line can be a little blurry at times. Mm-hmm. I understand the premise, though. Any other councillors wishing to speak at this point or offer comments before we consider the revised resolution against what we saw on our agenda? No. Okay. All right, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report entitled Procurement Bylaw Update, dated October 5th, 2020, for information. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. So that brings us to item 5.5 on our agenda tonight. We do not have a report from our Manager of Environmental Services. Let's turn to item 5.6. As item 5.6.1, Council is asked to award the tender for proposed work on the Wallace Concession 4 municipal drain. I'll invite, is Mr. Couch with us? I think he's vacationing. Okay, so Josh, I gather that you might be our subject matter expert for this one.
Yes, I wasn't sure I was going to be speaking to it, but we received tenders last Thursday for the Wallace Concession 4 drain. 4 submissions. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I'm not sure who the low bid was necessarily, but it was deemed to be compliant by the engineers on the tender, GM Blue Plan. And I believe their letter of recommendation is attached.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions of council on this matter? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award the tender for the work on the Wallace Concession 4 municipal drain as per the recommendation from GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited to Ron H. Williams Drainage Inc. in the amount of $150,425 HST excluded. Can I call on is Councillor Duncan, do we have audio solutions for him or no? Matt?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yay.
Matt.
Seem to have effects now.
Would you? Yeah, that's very exciting.
I will certainly move it.
All right, thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our second?
Yes, I will second that one. Thanks.
Thanks. Notice my excitement at small things. All right, any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. And we're missing one. And there it is. Okay, and that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to agenda. We have nothing from the fire chief. Working hard as always. Let's move to agenda item 6. For item 6.1, councilors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Again, if you're interested in speaking to this agenda item, please express that interest through the chat function in our web conferencing tool. Councillor Behrens?
Yes, no request for reports, but I will note that we do have a budget visioning meeting tomorrow night. I was wondering if it was possible if Clerk Bearfelds could send out all the WebEx meeting invites for the budget meeting so that we can all get them in our calendar, if that would be possible in the next couple of weeks or so. That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's been taken note of. She's nodding her head yes. So that's a yes. Any other requests for reports at this time under agenda item number 6? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Dreesen, please.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Todd. I think it was back in June I had asked for a report from staff regarding some discussions around just celebrating the work of our volunteers and the work of staff. And I don't seem to remember if we had a report on that yet. I may be mistaken, but we're getting to that time of year again and just wondering what the next step is as we think about recognizing those people in our organization. Thanks.
Thank you. CAO Snell, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Now Councillor Andreessen is jogging my memory, and I'm not sure if that was brought back to council as a report or not, but I know we did meet with the Volunteer Appreciation Committee, and I will just follow up on that meeting and bring that forward to council if it hasn't already been done. So thank you.
Any other requests this time? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I'm just wondering if one of our county councillors can update council, North Perth Council, with respect to 2 items that county council dealt with last Thursday. One of them being the speed reduction on Perth Line 88, which was supported by our council, and secondly, timing and process coming forward regarding surplus farmhouse severances. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Under item 10.1, I was going to announce that County Council did resolve to change the speed limit for, I think, about 340 meters of road in Gowan's Town. And so that is pending signage, obviously. And I'm not sure what the timeline typically is on signage, but that is forthcoming and approved. As for the second matter, I believe that's a negotiation still between the clerk, the CAO, and Ms. McMullen in the county office with regards to a presentation to our council. But I know that a presentation to our council about the concepts that have been advocated and changes recommended as OPA are forthcoming. And I would expect imminent, actually. So given that our next council meeting is October 19th, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it were on the agenda for the next meeting. CAO Snell, do you have anything to add to that one?
Having been on vacation since October 1st, I haven't had the opportunity to speak to Ms. McMullen yet, but I will follow up with her tomorrow.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anything further under item 6? We've received no items of correspondence beyond. Oh. It was a thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's good. We have received no items of correspondence beyond that already shared for council's disposition, which brings us to agenda item number 8. We have no additional bylaws to consider this evening, which means we get to kick along here to item 9 on our agenda. Councillors, are there any notices of motion from you this evening? Seeing no indication of that, that brings us to item number 10. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And if you'd like to speak, just indicate that to the clerk through the chat function. So again, congratulations to Mr. Yilmaz and his partner for their baby. Do we know, can you tell me more, Clerk Bearfelds? What do we know? It's a girl. It's a girl. All right. And her name is Aubrey. There we go. Wonderful news for a member of our team. And council, this is Fire Prevention Week. So I draw your attention to that and to various activities and promotions that will happen coming from the fire department this week. I had the privilege of filming a short video to talk about their theme this year, and their theme is kitchen safety, kitchen fire safety. So please take note of that effort on behalf of the organization. Clerk Bearfelds, Councillor Johnston.
Just a reminder of tomorrow night council visioning session for the budget.
Councillors, be there or be square. I think that's the message for that. Councillor Andreessen, you're next.
Yes, just to add to additional community support, the United Way campaign has just been kicked off, and I certainly want to encourage our community and our council to support our local United Way. It's a great effort that supports many aspects of our community, and again, I think it's a great cause. So think about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. True words. Council, you may have taken note of the news story. I don't have a lot more detail than what's been published in the news today of a flood at the Listowel Memorial Hospital. A little bit concerning, obviously, and we will keep you informed as to what we learn as we move forward. I felt it perhaps a little impolitic to call CAO Ellis there today, but I will connect with him in the coming hours to see how he's doing and how the hospital's doing on that front. So we'll stay tuned. Any other announcements that we have? Okay, that brings us to agenda item number 11. We have one matter before us to be considered in a closed session of council, and I'll read the resolution that both explains and enables our action to enter a closed session. The resolution reads as follows: that this committee proceed in camera at 8:13 p.m. To address a matter pertaining to the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding the award of tenders. May I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder for this one?
Yeah, I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we're missing out there. And that is carried. Thank you. Council, we are going to temporarily adjourn for the purpose of holding an in-camera meeting. All those staff who have not been invited to participate in the in-camera meeting are asked to sign off the web conference at this point in time. And only those staff and councillors who've been invited to be here should be here. And we will reconvene our session as we clean up that and change our broadcast outputs in about 5 minutes. Simon, are you with us? Can we validate that the audio and feed is back? Okay, thank you, Council, for your participation in the closed session meeting. At this time, I am just to report that Council has considered a matter pertaining to the procurement bylaw, which was on our table tonight, and has resolved its matters and concerns with respect to this, so that we can move forward for consideration of the bylaw. Council, I have the bylaw before me, which is a corrected bylaw against a previous version. I'm wondering if you would consider my request to pause this for our next meeting so that some of the comments that were made tonight are fully considered and implemented in the text of the bylaw, and a report on some of the matters that were discussed instead of moving ahead with this. Does anyone really wish to push this forward to consider the bylaw as proposed? Okay, Chair Hale, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to take the opportunity to echo the Mayor's sentiment there and request actually that the bylaw that was brought to you this evening be deferred until the next meeting. This will give us an opportunity to clarify some of the points that were made by the Mayor and Council, and to give us an opportunity just to review it once more. Our department heads only had a short period of time to look at it as well, so this will give them a little bit more opportunity, as some of the things that were brought forward by council for consideration gives us thought for pause. So I do actually that it be deferred if possible this evening.
Thank you. Any councillor feel strongly differently? Okay. So I think we need to make a resolution on the fly, because the clerk tells me she'd like to have a resolution on the books, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth defer consideration of bylaw number 150-2020 until a future appropriate meeting. I think that's fair. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for that one?
Yes, Mayor Todd, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstett, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this deferral until we've had a chance to consolidate the thinking of various members of council and staff on this? We're not having a vote though, right? We have a vote, but a manual vote? Okay, so eScribe is not going to serve up our vote, but councillors, at this time, I'll call for any who are opposed to this matter, just so indicate. Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 13 on our agenda, the so-called confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft of that reads as follows: that bylaw number 143-2020, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. And said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Behrens? No, I can't do that. Let me see here. Councillor Duncan, will you serve as our mover?
Yes, I will move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on that matter? Noting that there will be some abstentions because of pecuniary interest. Are there any opposed? Please indicate it. Seeing no indication of an opposed vote, we'll call that carried as well. And finally, that brings us to the happy moment of our meeting when we get to consider adjournment. Councillors, we have completed the deliberation and take an action on the business that did come before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any further urgent business that must be considered? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration that the council meeting adjourns at 8:47 p.m. to meet again for a 2021 budget visioning session on Tuesday. The resolution says Monday, Pat. Tuesday, October 6th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Can I call on Councillor Behrens to be our mover for that one? Did we lose Julie's audio? Julie, are you there? Maybe not. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll move that, Mayor Todd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you second that?
I will second that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, we'll call this council meeting adjourned, and we meet again tomorrow night for our budget visioning session. Thanks for the good meeting, folks. Meeting is adjourned.